The HFY Dominion, a ruthless and powerful empire, had declared war on every other race. Their fleets were massive, their weapons unmatched, and their soldiers without mercy. They moved from system to system, crushing anyone who dared to resist. Planet after planet fell, and soon, the once great galactic coalition was on the verge of collapse. The coalition had formed centuries ago, a union of different alien species working together for peace and progress. They had built great cities, powerful starships, and vast trade routes that connected hundreds of worlds. But none of that mattered now. Against the HFY, they were helpless. On the bridge of the Xiphorian command station, Supreme Chancellor Calorith, leader of the coalition, stared at the holographic battle map. The red markers, representing Sci-Fi warships, outnumbered the blue markers of the coalition's fleet 10-1. The enemy was advancing toward their last major stronghold, Epsilon Prime. "This is our final stand," whispered General Velos, a reptilian war strategist from the Drakari Empire. His sharp claws tapped nervously against the control panel. "If we lose Epsilon Prime, the war is over." Calorith clenched his fists. "We have no choice but to fight." But deep inside, he knew the truth. They couldn't win. The coalition had already lost 70% of its fleet. Their greatest warriors had fallen. Their strongest fortresses had crumbled. The HFY were simply too strong. Their technology was more advanced, their weapons more destructive. No matter how hard the coalition fought, the enemy kept coming, unstoppable, like a storm that would never end. A deep rumbling voice filled the command room. It was High Imperator Calvrex, supreme leader of the HFY Dominion. His message echoed through every coalition channel. "Your time is over. Surrender now, and we may allow some of you to live as slaves. Resist, and you will be erased from existence." A cold silence fell over the room. The coalition leaders looked at one another, their eyes filled with fear. Was this it? Was this how the great galactic coalition would end, on their knees, begging for mercy? Then a voice broke the silence. "No." Everyone turned to Commander Aureus, the coalition's chief communications officer. He was staring at his console, his eyes wide. "We just received a message. From outside the coalition." Calorith frowned. "From where?" Aureus hesitated, as if he himself couldn't believe it. Then he turned to the Chancellor and spoke a name that had not been heard in galactic politics for over a century. "Humanity." The room froze. Humanity. The lost race. The isolationists. The ones who had refused to join the coalition, refused to share their technology, refused to take part in the affairs of the wider galaxy. For centuries, they had stayed hidden, never interfering in galactic wars or politics. Many believed they were weak. Some even doubted if they still existed at all. Calorith's voice was quiet, but firm. "Put them through." A new voice echoed through the room. Deep. Commanding. Human. "This is Admiral Elias Voss of the United Nations Space Command. We received your distress call." Calorith stepped forward. "Admiral Voss, we err." "I know your situation, Chancellor," Voss interrupted. "We've been monitoring the war. The HFY have grown too powerful. If they win, the galaxy falls." General Velos narrowed his eyes. "And why does that concern humanity? You stayed out of our wars before. Why intervene now?" There was a pause. Then Voss spoke, his voice filled with quiet steel. "Because no one else is left." Calorith's heart pounded. "Are you offering to help us?" "You misunderstand, Chancellor," Voss replied. "We're not offering. We're coming." And then the transmission ended. Aureus quickly checked his console, his fingers flying over the controls. "I'm detecting a single FTL signature entering the system. It's massive." Calorith stared at the screen as a new marker appeared, one single blue dot. "One ship," General Velos hissed. "They're sending one ship against the entire HFY fleet." Aureus's voice was barely above a whisper. "It's not just any ship." He zoomed in on the marker, and a name appeared on the screen. UNS Vvalkyrien, the last hope of humanity. And maybe, just maybe, the last hope of the galaxy. It appeared from the depths of space, emerging from faster-than-light travel with a blinding white flash. The ship was massive, larger than any coalition vessel, larger than even the HFY's dreadnoughts. UNS Valkyrian was its name, and as it moved forward, it cast a shadow over the burning remains of the coalition fleet. On the bridge of the Sci-Fi command station, Supreme Chancellor Kelrith and his officers stared in shock. They had expected a fleet, an armada, anything but one ship. Are they serious? General Velos, the Drakari strategist, growled. One ship against an entire invasion force. This is madness. Aureus, the chief communications officer, checked his console. His voice trembled. They're hailing us again. Put them through, Kelrith ordered. The holographic display flickered, and once again, the face of Admiral Elias Voss appeared. The human officer's steely blue eyes scanned the room as if measuring every leader present. His expression was calm, too calm, considering the overwhelming fleet of the HFY Dominion right in front of him. This is Admiral Voss of the UNS Valkyrian, he said. We are engaging the enemy. General Velos hissed. You are one ship against an armada. What can you possibly do? Voss's expression didn't change. Watch. The transmission cut off. And then, the UNS Valkyrian moved. The first strike. The HFY fleet wasted no time. Hundreds of warships, destroyers, and carriers turned toward the human vessel. They had already crushed the coalition's best forces. What was one more ship? The order came from High Imperator Kelvrex himself. Destroy it. A swarm of plasma torpedoes and energy lances streaked through space, fired from every HFY warship in range. The weapons raced toward the Valkyrian like a storm of death. But the human ship did not retreat. It did not evade. Instead, it opened fire. From the Valkyrian's hull, a storm of kinetic railgun slugs and gravimetric warheads erupted. Unlike the energy-based weapons of the coalition, these projectiles moved at near-light speeds, smashing through enemy fire before the plasma torpedoes could even reach their target. Boom, boom, boom. 3 HFY cruisers exploded in the first volley. Their shields were useless against the sheer force of human weaponry. The battlefield was filled with fire and debris as the Valkyrian punched through the enemy lines like a blade through paper. On the Sci-Fi command station, the coalition officers were speechless. How? Aureus stammered. Their weapons, they move so fast. Kelrith watched in silent awe. Humanity was not using energy weapons like the rest of the galaxy. They relied on pure, raw force. Their railguns were accelerating metal projectiles at near-light speeds, striking before enemy shields could react. Their warheads were not designed to burn. They crushed. And the HFY were not prepared for it. The turning tide. The enemy fleet tried to adjust. They regrouped, targeting the Valkyrian from multiple angles. But the human warship was faster than it looked. Its maneuvering thrusters burned bright, shifting the massive vessel with unexpected agility. It dodged, weaved, and returned fire with deadly precision. One by one, HFY battleships fell. The coalition fleet, battered and broken, watched in disbelief. The same enemy that had crushed them without effort was now being torn apart by one ship. On the HFY command bridge, High Imperator Kelvrex roared in frustration. This is impossible, he bellowed. Focus fire. Overload their shields. The HFY unleashed their heaviest dreadnoughts. Massive warships, each the size of a city, moved in to surround the Valkyrian. Their main cannons, planet crackers, began to charge. Kelrith clenched his fists. Even the humans can't survive that. But Admiral Voss had one more surprise. Humanity's final warning. For the first time, the Valkyrian's main weapon activated. A massive cannon along its spinal hull began to glow, its energy building into something terrifying. The coalition leaders had seen many weapons in their time, but this felt different. Then, Voss's voice echoed across all open channels. "This is Admiral Elias Voss of the United Nations Space Command. Attention, Xelfar Dominion." There was a pause. The battlefield went silent. "We have scanned your flagship's energy core. We have locked onto it." Kelvrex sneered. "They think they can threaten me." Voss continued. "Your shields are designed to withstand plasma-based weapons. They are not designed to withstand a hyperdense slug moving at 80% the speed of light." The Imperator's expression darkened. "Fire." The Valkyrian's spinal railgun unleashed its shot. The projectile, no larger than a small ship, moved so fast that it shattered reality itself. Space warped around it. A moment later, it struck the Xelfar flagship, and it passed straight through. For a second, nothing happened. Then, a shockwave erupted from the ship's core. Fire and energy burst outward, consuming everything in its path. The Xelfar flagship, the pride of their empire, was obliterated in a single shot. Silence fell across the battlefield. The Xelfar fleet, once so confident, began to retreat. Their forces scattered, their commanders in panic. They had never known fear before. But now, they had learned to fear humanity. As the battle ended, Kellerith finally understood. Humanity had not stayed away because they were weak. They had stayed away because they were strong. And now, the galaxy had witnessed their power. The galaxy had never seen anything like this before. One ship, just one, had shattered the Xelfar fleet at the edge of Coalition space. The UNS Valkyrian stood victorious, its black hull untouched, its weapons still glowing with energy. For the first time in history, the Xelfar Dominion had suffered a defeat. But the war was not over. Far beyond the battlefield, on the war-torn planet Epsilon Prime, the last major coalition stronghold was under siege. Millions of civilians, soldiers, and refugees had taken shelter in the underground bunkers of the once thriving world. The Xelfar's ground forces, a brutal army of war machines and bio-enhanced warriors, were closing in, preparing to wipe out the last resistance. If Epsilon Prime fell, the coalition would be finished. A call for help. On the surface of Epsilon Prime, General Aaron Daler of the Coalition Defense Force stood inside a command bunker. His soldiers were exhausted, their weapons running low on power. The sky above was filled with Xelfar warships, launching bombardments onto the ruined cities. A desperate transmission was sent across all frequencies. "This is General Daler of the Coalition Forces. We are barely holding the line. If anyone can hear this, if there is any hope left, please help us." Silence followed. Daler sighed. He had fought for decades, but even he knew this was the end. No one was coming. Then a voice responded. "Hold the line, General." Daler froze. The voice was deep, calm, and filled with certainty. It was Admiral Elias Voss. "Reinforcements," one of Daler's officers asked. "How many ships?" Voss's response was simple. "Just one. The UNS Valkyrian enters the battle." High above Epsilon Prime, the Xelfar fleet prepared to finish what they had started. Their warships locked onto the surface, ready to unleash their final attack. Then, without warning, a shadow fell over the battlefield. The Valkyrian had arrived. Xelfar commanders panicked. Their sensors were filled with alarms. The human warship moved like a ghost, bypassing enemy defenses with unnatural speed. The first shot was fired. Boom! A Xelfar dreadnought, twice the size of the Valkyrian, was ripped apart by a single railgun slug. Fire and debris filled the sky as the human warship tore through the enemy ranks. Hundreds of enemy fighters swarmed toward it. The Valkyrian's point defense cannons locked onto them, firing with perfect precision. Within seconds, the swarm was nothing but burning wreckage. On the ground, General Daler and his soldiers watched in awe. "They're winning," a soldier whispered. "One ship against all of that. And they're winning." A new kind of warfare. The HFY ground forces knew nothing of mercy. They had already breached the outer defenses of the coalition's last stronghold, preparing to wipe out the survivors. But humanity had come prepared. The Valkyrian released its drop pods, each carrying heavily armored human soldiers. They landed like meteors, slamming into the battlefield with thunderous force. When the doors opened, elite troops of the United Nations Space Command stepped out. The HFY had fought many enemies before. They had faced armies, navies, and planetary defenses. But they had never faced humans in battle. Human soldiers fought differently. They moved faster. They aimed better. They used tactics that no other species had even considered. They fought to win. The battlefield turned into chaos. HFY warriors, expecting another easy victory, found themselves outmatched in every way. Human snipers took down enemy commanders from impossible distances. Grenades detonated with devastating force, wiping out entire squads. And when it came to hand-to-hand combat, the HFY discovered that humans did not fear them. Within hours, the enemy advance was halted. By nightfall, they were retreating. The fall of the HFY siege. The HFY fleet, realizing that the battle was lost, tried to flee into hyperspace. The Valkyrian didn't let them. It fired its gravitic torpedoes, weapons that collapsed space around their targets. The enemy ships were trapped, unable to escape. One by one, the HFY warships were destroyed. For the first time, the coalition had won a battle. A warning to the HFY. When the battle was over, Admiral Voss sent a message to the HFY Dominion's High Command. His voice was calm, but his words were a warning. "Your invasion ends here. You thought the galaxy was yours to conquer. You were wrong. If you come again, you will face humanity's full strength." The transmission was broadcast across the entire HFY empire. Billions of their people heard it. And for the first time, the HFY knew fear. Epsilon Prime had been saved. The coalition had hope again. And the legend of humanity had only just begun. The war had changed. For years, the HFY Dominion had been unstoppable. They had crushed every enemy, conquered every world, and shattered every resistance. The galaxy had believed them to be invincible. But then, humanity arrived. A single warship, the UNS Valkyrian, had defeated an entire invasion fleet. A single battle had turned fear into hope. The HFY, once arrogant and confident, now hesitated. The coalition had survived. Epsilon Prime was safe. But the war was far from over. And the HFY Dominion was preparing its revenge. A new plan, deep in the heart of the HFY homeworld, inside the massive War Council chamber, the High Imperator Calvrex stood before his generals. His yellow eyes burned with anger. "We underestimated them," he growled. "We assumed humanity was weak. That was a mistake." The room was silent. No one dared to speak. Calvrex's claws scraped against the metal table. He was furious. The HFY had ruled through fear, and now, for the first time, they were the ones afraid. A holographic image appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a new weapon, a massive warship, even larger than the Valkyrian, the Doombringer. "This is our answer," the Imperator said. "A ship designed to destroy humanity. It is stronger, faster, and deadlier than anything they have ever faced." One of his generals stepped forward. "We should build an armada and crush them before they become a real threat." Calvrex shook his head. "No, a direct attack failed before. Humanity fights differently. They are not like the other species we have conquered." Another general growled. "Then what do you propose?" The Imperator bared his fangs. "We will not fight them in space. We will hunt them where they are weakest." The room fell silent. Then the realization hit the generals. They were going after Earth. The ambush. The UNS Valkyrian had returned to coalition space. It hovered above Epsilon Prime, acting as a guardian while repairs were underway. The coalition leaders, once fearful and defeated, now saw a new future, a future where the HFY could be beaten. Inside the war room of the Valkyrian, Admiral Elias Voss stood with Supreme Chancellor Kallarith and General Velos. A large holographic display showed new fleet movements. Kallarith spoke first. The HFY have pulled back. We expected them to launch another attack, but they haven't. Voss narrowed his eyes. That's not like them. They don't retreat without a reason. Velos tapped his claws against the table. Perhaps they fear you. Voss shook his head. Fear won't stop them. It only makes them more dangerous. Aureus, the chief communications officer, suddenly looked up. Admiral, we just intercepted a transmission. The room went quiet. Aureus played the message. Emergency distress call. This is the UNS Atlas, en route to Earth. We are under attack. I repeat, we air. The transmission cut off. Voss's blood ran cold. Kallarith frowned. Who is the UNS Atlas? Voss turned to him. A deep space transport ship, carrying refugees back to Earth. Silence filled the room. Velos's eyes widened. It's a trap. Voss's jaw tightened. The HFY aren't attacking here. They're going after Earth. Without hesitation, he turned to the helm officer. Prepare for immediate jump to the Sol system. We're going home. Race against time. The Valkyrian's FTL engines roared to life. In a flash of light, it disappeared from coalition space, racing toward humanity's homeworld. As they traveled, Voss stood on the bridge, staring at the screen. He knew what the HFY were planning. They weren't just attacking Earth. They were trying to end humanity before it could rise. The HFY knew that if they let humans spread, they would never be able to stop them. So they were going for the heart, the place where it all began. But Voss was not going to let that happen. His officers worked quickly. Tactical reports, sensor scans, fleet positioning, all of it updated in real time. Aureus spoke urgently. Admiral, we are detecting multiple HFY warships near Earth. They've already started the attack. Voss clenched his fists. Not on my watch. The Valkyrian dropped out of FTL. And for the first time in centuries, a human warship returned to its home system, ready for battle. The defense of Earth begins. The moment they arrived, alarms blared across the ship. The enemy was already in position. Dozens of Sci-Fi warships surrounded Earth, their weapons aimed at major cities. Fires burned in the sky as explosions rocked Earth's orbital defense stations. The few human ships that remained were fighting desperately, but they were outnumbered. Voss's eyes darkened. Status report. A lieutenant quickly responded. The HFY are targeting key cities, New London, Neo-Tokyo, and the Mars colonies. They're planning to wipe out our entire infrastructure. Kallarith's voice came through the comms. If Earth falls, the rest of the galaxy will lose hope. Voss gave a single command. Then let's remind them why humanity is not to be underestimated. The Valkyrian charged into the fight. As it moved, its weapons roared to life, firing railgun slugs and gravimetric torpedoes. Enemy warships exploded in the first volley. The HFY, caught off guard by the sudden arrival, scrambled to regroup. But it was too late. Humanity's warship had returned home, and it was ready to show that HFY their greatest mistake, challenging humanity. The UNS Valkyrian charged into battle like a predator among prey. The space around Earth was a storm of fire and destruction. Zelfar warships, sleek and deadly, surrounded the planet, their cannons unleashing devastation upon Earth's orbital defenses. Below, cities burned. The sky was filled with smoke and debris. Humanity's homeworld was under siege. But now, the tide was about to turn. The Valkyrian strikes back. Admiral Elias Voss stood tall on the bridge, his blue eyes cold with determination. "Lock onto the nearest enemy battleship," he ordered. "Fire at will." The Valkyrian's main railgun charged, its energy core glowing white-hot. In the blink of an eye, it fired. A single hyper-dense projectile tore through the void at nearly the speed of light. The HFY battleship, massive and heavily armored, never stood a chance. The shot ripped through its shields, tore through its hull, and detonated its core. The warship exploded into a ball of fire, sending debris flying in all directions. The HFY fleet faltered. They had never seen a ship like this before. "Push forward," Voss commanded. "Target their command ships." The Valkyrian moved like a ghost, weaving through enemy fire with impossible agility. Its energy shields deflected plasma bolts, while its point defense turrets obliterated incoming missiles. Every time it fired, an enemy ship was destroyed. The battlefield shifted. Humanity was fighting back. Ground war in the streets of Earth. Meanwhile, on the surface, the battle was just as fierce. Zelfar drop pods rained down like meteors, smashing into the streets of New London and Neo-Tokyo. Their warriors poured out, their plasma blades cutting through soldiers and vehicles alike. But Earth's defenders were ready. The United Nations Marine Corps held the streets, their armored exosuits making them stronger, faster, and deadlier than any normal soldier. Plasma fire lit up the night, and explosions shook the cityscape. Captain Marcus Steele, a veteran soldier, barked orders to his squad. "Hold the line. Don't let them take another step." A squad of Zelfar warriors rushed forward, their weapons raised. Marcus raised his rifle, aimed and fired. 3 of them fell instantly. The rest hesitated. Marcus smirked. "Yeah, that's right. You're not dealing with some weak aliens now." His men pushed forward, their battle cries echoing through the ruined city. For every human that fell, 10 Zelfar died. The Zelfar's last gamble. In space, the Zelfar fleet was in chaos. Their losses were mounting. Their commanders knew they had underestimated the humans again. The flagship, Doombringer, remained untouched. It was their final weapon, a super dreadnought with unmatched firepower. Inside, Overlord Calvarex growled in frustration. His fleet was losing, and this was not how the battle was supposed to go. "This ends now," he snarled. "Charge the main cannon. Target the Valkyrian." His crew obeyed instantly. The Doombringer's massive energy cannon began charging, glowing a deep crimson. On the Valkyrian's bridge, alarms blared. "Admiral," Aureus shouted, "their main weapon is locking onto us." Voss didn't hesitate. Evasive maneuvers. "Fire everything we have at that ship." The Valkyrian's railguns, missiles, and plasma cannons fired at once, hammering the Doombringer's shields. The Zelfar warship shook under the assault, but it did not break. Then, the enemy's cannon fired. A beam of pure destruction shot toward the Valkyrian at terrifying speed. "Brace for impact," someone yelled. A desperate move. At the last second, the Valkyrian engaged emergency thrusters, tilting just enough for the beam to miss the main reactor. It still hit. The ship shook violently. Consoles exploded. Sparks flew. The shields collapsed. The Valkyrian's hull cracked, fire spreading through its lower decks. The ship was in trouble, but it was still standing. Admiral Voss wiped blood from his forehead. His ship was damaged, but not destroyed. And he still had one last trick. He turned to his weapons officer. "Divert all power to the railgun. We're taking that thing down." The Valkyrian's main railgun began charging again. This time, it was overloading. It would be the most powerful shot the ship had ever fired. Calvarex saw it on his screens. His claws clenched. "Fire another blast. Destroy them now." But the Doombringer's cannon was still recharging. It was too slow. Voss narrowed his eyes. "Fire." The Valkyrian's final shot blasted through space. It hit the Doombringer's main power core. A blinding explosion erupted. The Doombringer was ripped apart, its massive structure breaking into a million pieces. Kelvrex and his crew vanished in the fire. Victory for humanity. The destruction of the flagship sent a clear message. The XL-FAR fleet panicked. Their remaining warships fled. They wanted nothing more to do with this battle. On Earth, the XL-FAR ground forces received the final transmission. Retreat. They fled into the darkness, leaving their dead behind. For the first time in history, the XL-FAR had lost a full-scale invasion. A warning to the galaxy. As the fires died down, as the survivors of Earth stepped out of their bunkers, as soldiers looked up at the sky filled with wreckage, one thing was clear. Humanity had survived. The UNS Valkyrian, though damaged, stood victorious. And now, the galaxy knew the truth. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was a force unlike anything the universe had ever seen. And the war was far from over. The battle for Earth was over. The UNS Valkyrian floated in orbit, its hull scarred, its shields weakened, but it was still standing. The XL-FAR fleet had been defeated, their super dreadnought Doombringer destroyed, and their armies forced to retreat. For the first time in history, humanity had turned the tide. But the war was not over. The XL-FAR Dominion had suffered a humiliating defeat, and they would not forget. In the shadows of the galaxy, they were already planning their revenge. A call for war. Deep inside the XL-FAR homeworld, within the Great War Chamber, the surviving XL-FAR leaders gathered. The chamber was massive, with high ceilings covered in glowing symbols of their past victories. But today, those symbols meant nothing. Because today, the XL-FAR were afraid. A low growl filled the room as Overlord Korvek, the new Supreme Commander, slammed his fist on the war table. His black armor gleamed under the red lights. "We have suffered a great dishonor," he growled. His yellow eyes burned with anger. "Never before have we lost to an inferior species." The room remained silent. The XL-FAR prided themselves on strength, on their ability to crush all who opposed them. But humanity had done the impossible. They had fought back and won. One of the warlords hissed, "The Valkyrian. That ship is the reason we lost." Korvek nodded. "Yes, but the Valkyrian is just the beginning. If we do nothing, humanity will grow stronger." His voice was like thunder. "They will build more warships. They will arm their people. And one day, they will come for us." The room tensed. The XL-FAR had been the hunters for centuries. Now, for the first time, they were the prey. Korvek raised a single claw. A holographic projection appeared in the center of the chamber, a vast fleet, larger than anything the Dominion had ever assembled. "We will not wait for humanity to strike first," he declared. "We will end them before they can rise." The warlords roared in approval. The final invasion of Earth had begun. The Valkyrian's mission. Back on the Valkyrian, Admiral Elias Voss stood on the bridge, staring at the holographic display in front of him. Reports from across the galaxy showed XL-FAR forces regrouping. They had lost a battle, but they were far from defeated. "They're coming back," said Captain Orcs, the Valkyrian's chief strategist. "And this time, they won't make the same mistake." Voss nodded. "They'll bring everything they have." He turned to the war room, where Supreme Chancellor Kalorith and General Velos stood beside him. "If we wait, they'll strike Earth again," Voss said. "We need to hit them first." Kalorith hesitated. "Are you suggesting an attack on their homeworld?" Velos, the Coalition's finest warrior, nodded in agreement. "It's the only way. If we strike now, we can end this war before it begins." Voss walked to the center of the room and pointed at the XL-FAR Dominion's capital system. "This is their heart. If we destroy their leadership, we can cripple their entire empire." Kalorith took a deep breath. "It's a great risk." Voss's expression hardened. "It's a greater risk to do nothing." Silence filled the room. Then, the Supreme Chancellor gave a slow nod. Very well. Into the heart of the beast, the Valkyrian, along with a small fleet of the most advanced warships humanity had prepared for the most dangerous mission in history. Their goal was simple: strike at the heart of the HFY Dominion before they could launch another invasion. Inside the war room, Captain Orcs studied the enemy's defenses. They won't expect an attack this deep in their territory. But once they realize we're there, they'll throw everything at us, Velos warned. Voss looked at his officers, his voice calm but firm. Then we'll just have to move faster than them. The ships powered up their FTL drives, and with a flash of energy, they vanished into the void. The trap. As the fleet exited hyperspace near the HFY homeworld, alarms immediately blared across the Valkyrian. "We've been detected," Orcs shouted. A holographic display lit up with hundreds of enemy warships. The HFY were waiting for them. Voss's jaw tightened. They knew we were coming. On the enemy flagship, Overlord Korvek sneered as he watched the human fleet arrive. "You thought you could attack us?" He bared his fangs. "You fools have walked into your own destruction." With a motion of his claw, the entire HFY fleet advanced. The battle begins. The first shots were fired. A massive energy beam from the HFY flagship narrowly missed the Valkyrian, but one of the human destroyers was obliterated instantly. Voss gritted his teeth. "All ships, engage. Target their command vessels." The battle exploded into chaos. The Valkyrians' railguns roared, blasting through enemy shields. Human and HFY fighters weaved between capital ships, dodging plasma fire. One of the coalition warships smashed into an enemy cruiser, both vessels erupting in flames. Voss clenched his fists. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and surrounded. But they had one advantage: humanity never gave up. Then something even worse happened. A new massive warship emerged from the darkness, twice the size of the Doombringer. Orcs's voice was full of disbelief. "Admiral, what is that?" Voss's stomach dropped. The HFY had built something far worse than before. And now, humanity's fate depended on the final battle. The battle had begun. The UNS Valkyrian and its fleet were deep inside HFY space, surrounded by an armada of enemy warships. Blazing plasma bolts and kinetic rounds filled the void, turning the battlefield into a storm of fire and destruction. But it was the colossal warship ahead that made Admiral Elias Voss's blood run cold. It was the Leviathan, the largest and most powerful HFY warship ever built, twice the size of the Doombringer, armed with planet-killer weapons, and protected by shields stronger than anything humanity had ever faced. A single shot from its main cannon could destroy an entire fleet. And now it was locking onto the Valkyrian. Surrounded and outgunned, "Admiral, we have incoming fire," Orcs shouted. The Leviathan's superweapon began to glow, charging up for a devastating attack. Voss reacted instantly. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Now. A second later, a blinding beam of energy erupted from the Leviathan. One of humanity's heavy cruisers, the UNS Dauntless, tried to escape, but the beam sliced through it like paper. The ship exploded in a massive fireball, taking hundreds of brave soldiers with it. Voss's hands clenched into fists. They were losing ships fast. "We can't fight this thing head-on," Captain Orcs warned. Voss nodded. "Then we need to outthink them." A desperate plan. The Valkyrian sensors detected something, an energy source deep inside the Leviathan. Orcs analyzed the data. "It's their power core. If we destroy it, we can take the whole ship down." Voss's mind raced. The Leviathan's core was heavily protected. A direct attack would be suicide. Unless a crazy idea formed in his mind. "What if we send a strike team inside?" Voss said. "Get into the Leviathan, plant explosives, and blow the core from the inside." Orcs's eyes widened. "That's insane." "But it might work," General Velos added. "We just need a small team, fast and precise. Voss made his decision. Prepare a strike team. I'm leading it myself. The infiltration. A small cover team of elite soldiers launched from the Valkyrian in stealth drop pods. Voss, Aureus, and a squad of highly trained Marines descended through the chaos of battle, avoiding enemy fire. Their target was a docking bay on the Leviathan. The moment their pods landed, they rushed out, weapons ready. Inside, Zelfar warriors reacted in shock. They had never expected humans to board their greatest warship. But the humans moved like lightning. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air as the team pushed forward, gunning down enemy soldiers and hacking through security doors. They fought through narrow corridors, racing toward the core, the heart of the Leviathan. Finally, they reached it, the Leviathan's main reactor chamber. A massive glowing power core pulsed with raw energy. Aureus quickly set up the explosives. We got 3 minutes before detonation. Just then, the doors slammed open, and a squad of HFY enforcers charged in. The fight was brutal. Voss spun and fired, dropping 2 enemies with precise headshots. Aureus took cover, blasting a warrior who got too close. The Marines fought with everything they had, but the enemy was relentless. We're running out of time, Aureus shouted. Voss grabbed his communicator. Valkyrian, we need extraction. Now. Escape and sacrifice. The explosives were set. The team rushed back toward the docking bay as alarms blared across the Leviathan. But the ship's defenses activated, cutting off their escape route. A blast door began closing. Voss saw it happening. He shoved Aureus forward. Go. Get out of here. Aureus turned in shock. No, you're coming with us. Voss smiled sadly. I'll hold them off. You finish the mission. Before anyone could stop him, Voss slammed the emergency controls, sealing the escape route. He turned back to face the oncoming Zelfar forces, raising his rifle. Behind him, Aureus and the team escaped in their drop pods, heading back to the Valkyrian. From the ship's bridge, Aureus watched in silence. Then, the explosives detonated. A massive shockwave tore through the Leviathan. The ship shuddered violently, its armor cracking as fire erupted from within. The HFY warship, their ultimate weapon, was falling apart. The end of the war. With their flagship destroyed, the HFY fleet panicked. Their warriors lost their will to fight. The Valkyrian led the final charge, cutting through the remaining enemy ships. Within minutes, the once mighty HFY were in full retreat. Humanity had won, a hero's legacy. The battle was over. The war was over. Earth was safe. But Admiral Elias Voss was gone. Aureus stood on the bridge, looking out at the wreckage of the Leviathan. He had lost a mentor, a friend. But Voss had given humanity a future, a message to the galaxy. News of the battle spread across the stars. The HFY Dominion, once the most feared empire, had been defeated by humanity. And the galaxy had learned a simple truth. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was a force to be reckoned with. And now, the universe would never forget.